It's time for us to welcome in David Pagnotta. Let's talk about this Erik Karlsson trade. How did it come together? You had a lot of moving parts on this one.
Yeah, there certainly were, Tony. I mean, this was something that the Penguins had been working on with the San Jose Sharks for a few months, among other teams. Carolina was definitely very much involved and in the works in this one. Seattle as well, Toronto to a certain extent. There were a few other clubs, but the Pittsburgh Penguins from the get-go wanted to try to make this happen. And the biggest caveat for them and San Jose really was making the dollars work. And the Sharks tried to minimize, and they ultimately did, the amount of money that was going to be retained on Erik Karlsson's deal. It's only $1.5 million. But the Pittsburgh Penguins, they don't like buyouts. They had a window. They preferred to move out the money versus going the buyout route to free up some cap space. And they made this work. Kyle Dubas and his staff very creative and bold, really, in trying to make this happen and ultimately making this work with the Montreal Canadiens as a third party. They weren't afraid to give up additional assets, like a second-round pick in 2025, in order for the Canadiens to take on Petry's money in this one, even though they retained a little. But ultimately, that made all the dollars and cents kind of work out, with Hoffman ending up in San Jose with Mikael Granlund and Jan Rutta. All the moving pieces involved in this one made sense for both San Jose and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they were able to pull it off with minimal retention, from San Jose's perspective.
Dave, you mentioned about the dollars making sense, and Jeff Petry was that one in Pittsburgh that they figured if this trade was ever going to happen, he'd have to probably come off the books and go the other way. So he is in Montreal. What does that mean for Jeff Petry? He was such a factor for them when they went to the finals. He seemed like his career, he found a really good spot for himself there. How do you think this is going to shake out?
Well, when this all kind of came together, and this was about midweek last week, where it looked like it was heading in this direction, word started to get out that this was going to happen. The Canadiens started taking calls, or making calls, rather, to other teams, letting them know that they were going to be getting their hands on Jeff Petry and that he would be available. And they are willing to retain some money on his contract. Now, if they retain half, and it may not necessarily happen, this week, or this may be something that leads into training camp, but the Canadiens have made it known that now that they have Petry back within their organization, they're willing to move him. He ultimately wanted out at the time when he was with them, before he was traded to Pittsburgh. For family purposes, they made that work. If a team can get Jeff Petry at, let's say, 50% retention, that's just under $2.35 million. For a guy with his offensive caliber who needs to be back on the upswing, he's got a couple years left and wants to prove himself again, this could be a good opportunity for a club looking for some extra mobility from that back end. So the Canadiens are looking at this. They've already got a head start on trying to make this happen because of the cap system, and we're still smack in August. It may take a little bit of time, but I'd be a little bit surprised to see him start the training camp season with the Canadiens if the Habs can find a suitor for him.
You have that lovely green grass behind you. The grass isn't always greener someplace else. For Tom Wilson, he stays long-term in Washington, a 7-year extension. What's the next step for the Caps after getting that big deal done?
Yeah, I mean, that was a priority for them. They had some teams calling, knocking on the door, saying, hey, how would this look if you wanted to consider moving him? And they were just dead set on making it happen despite some interest from other clubs. But now it shifts. Now it goes to their top six, and Brian McClellan, their general manager, on Monday acknowledging and admitting publicly that they're still in the market for a top six winger. They want to add more offense to this club and continue to push them back into contender status and into the postseason. Now, this is a club that has some cap flexibility. So they're looking at moving out a player and a forward like Anthony Mantha, who has his cap hit little over $5 million. They want to be able to perhaps swap him out, maybe add to a deal in order to bring somebody else in that can go into their top six. Now, they signed Max Pacioretty, but with his injury concerns, and we don't know exactly the full extent of his health and when he'll be able to enter the lineup at full steam, they want to create some options. So they're looking at bringing in a top six goal scorer, and that's something McClellan would prefer to do before camp gets underway. We'll see if they can pull that off, but they're going to have to get creative in making it happen.
When we look out west to Calgary, do you got any updates here on Elias Lindholm and the Flames?
Yeah, they're trying to hammer this out and going back and forth and trying to make an extension happen. He's got the 1 year left on his deal, so this is his final year of his current contract. He's under $5 million this year, which is tremendous. Now, with all the talk and all the players in Calgary that have said they're not willing to sign an extension right now, Elias Lindholm is. He's looking at an 8-year extension. Two sides continue to try to work at that. But if the Calgary Flames want to make this work, they're going to have to get in and around or just over $9 million per year on an AAV. Now, my understanding is the latest discussions have hovered, from Calgary's side of things anyway, have hovered around 8.2, 8.3 million per season, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's not going to be enough to get this done. So if the Calgary Flames really want to get this done, and I mean, looking at some of the players that want to move on, they may have to kind of, buckle down here and make this happen. It's going to cost them close to $9 million per season. There's still time. There's no concern yet to this point. They're trying to make this work, but it's going to cost them. And Calgary, quite frankly, guys, they may not have much of a choice. They may have to make this happen.
Fascinating stuff. David Pagnotta, Inside Scoop, as always. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.